Hey, what's up, people? It's your boy Derek, aka Dashy. So I did a stupid. I literally just recorded myself making this video for a good number of minutes, and yet I realized I didn't have my mic on. Um, Getting along. Anyways, so as the title will suggest, when I put this on, it has actually at this point now it is exactly like 4 years and 10 days since this came out. Now, if you know this, you know this, you know. So, but one thing I want to say real quick before I get into this is that I want you to understand that there may be some, I may react to this or whatever. Although at this point, after all that, I think it should be like straightforward now. This is not a I don't want this to be a rant video, and it's not to put down the creator of this stuff because this didn't go out. But the idea is to pretty much just be like, look, I feel like this could have been something. I mean, for years, I will admit, I have been like a laughing thing. I mean, hey, one of my comments is here actually. Yeah, it's right here. Oh, you can't see it. Well, give me a second. It's like right here. I put that here. Yeah, I did that. That was the thing. I got 364 likes for that. Nice. But anyways, the point is that you know this this should have been a thing. This could have been a thing. And that face right there, that face right there, his face right here, man, it kind of says it all. But anyways, I know some of y'all are probably feeling this, but those of you who don't know, there was a comic that was announced by the name New Warriors. It was going to be a revamp, but the problem was it really did not do well, and this trailer said a lot. So my whole thing is just my thing is kind of like a playback, play by play of like how this should have been sold and such, what could have been brought up here, um, what shouldn't have never been said, and all that. My only thing is that, like I said, there are going to be some things like there's going to be a lot of negatives, some negatives here, and there is a negative character. But anyways, that being said, let's go ahead and go on through. And yeah, by the way, if you like this, let me know. Like if you feel like I should do more of this, like I kind of want to do stuff like this more often. But yeah, just let me know. Let me know. Give me a comment, like it, and subscribe and all that. You know what I'm saying? All right, let's go.
My name is Daniel Kill.
I don't care about you, but I will say this: this right here, that's pretty fire. That's pretty fire. That is pretty fire, right? You start out with the New Warriors, original stuff, and then you go, bam, here's something new. One of the major problems I'm going to bring up is this. It's the way this cover is done. Now, this is cool how you have all the old people. But then you got these people down here. We don't know these people. And you got to keep in mind, these are the main characters. These are the main characters. Not these guys up here. These guys. And yet, they're so small. Like, I mean, even Outlaw is bigger than them. But anyways, we're going to continue on.
My name is Daniel Kibblesmith, and I am the writer of New Warriors #1. I got interested in the New Warriors later. I remember seeing them on the shelf when I was a kid, picking up comics in the 90s, and just feeling like they were too cool for me. Like I was intimidated by, Night Thrasher who had a blade coming out of his wrist.
Nah. Okay. I brought this up. I was like, nah, don't do that. Like, nah. Here's the thing. I get what he's trying to say, But I think this should have been, and there's something he says actually after this bit right here, where it's like you should have started out with that. I mean, one thing he could have just said is that they don't even say like I got into it later. Just be like, what is so intriguing to you, like. The fact that it's edgy, that it's too cool and such. It's like those should be selling points because here's the thing. Although on the one hand you're selling this to people who used to read these comics, you're also trying to sell this to the people who've never read these comics. So you have to get them involved. But when you say that, it kind of comes off as like, oh, well, I mean, did you even like it? Because the thing is that if you think about it, it's like if I were to do like I don't know, like I was to work on a Care Bear movie, and I said, man, when I was a kid, Care Bears was whack and it was too girly or whatever. And it's like, but I'm selling the work. Like, you know what I mean? Like, did you even care about this? You know what I'm saying? So that should have been a no. That's a no.
Nova was really buff. They were all the edgy characters for the '90s, as the cover said. New War.
Like I said, edgy for the '90s. Like, and one thing I'm gonna say, like the word to think about, nostalgia. I'm gonna bring that up a lot, but there's a reason why I'm saying that.
Warriors, I thought, were really interesting characters because they occupy this really cool space. They're forever young, but they've now been around for 30 years.
That should have been the start. That right there, that statement right there should have been it. When he's like, I thought about these characters like this, the positives. Start with the positives. Just talk about that. Because then we won't have to make fun of you or have to be like, yo, man, what in the world? But you go into that. That should have been a starting point. That could have been like, hey, remember back then? Like these guys were cool and such. Yeah, that's awesome to think about.
My editors on the previous books I'd done, like Loki and Black Panther versus Deadpool, asked if I would be interested in doing a New Warriors tie-in that actually poses them as the authority figures in this conflict instead of the rebels, and I really liked the tension of that.
And I will say, that's a pretty nice approach. I could give that. Like, we see this all the time where you have like the old hero becoming like the mentor and such. So that is a nice little approach to come at this as. But again, I feel like when you say at the very start, like how you felt about it and such, that kind of draws back, and then it kind of makes people think like, well, did you want to do this anyways, or was it just because like you were just asked to do it, man? So, but yeah.
So, because the new warriors are the authority figures in this story, they have to be mentoring new warriors who are.
I think New Warriors should have been the title for this. Just saying, that would have been funny. New, like this just sounds funny, dude. Like I think that should have been it.
Under 21 and subject to the laws that triggered the outlawed event. This new law is making it illegal to be a vigilante under the age of 21.
This artwork, I'm gonna say, is super cool. I gotta give it that. Like I like the artwork here. I think this is really nice right here. Um, I'm gonna say early on, Cyclops and another character comes to mind. Um, yep.
The artist on New Warriors #1 is Luciano Vecchio. He designed all of the new Warriors and gave them costumes that felt as modern as the New Warriors costumes.
I'm not gonna say this is modern, but the time period that comes to mind is like 2000s, like maybe even mid late 2000s, like 2000 before 2010 and such, or even early 2010 and such. Um, yes, yes, yeah, yes, maybe to an extent, to an extent. Maybe this one, no, no. We gonna get to these two later. Trust and believe. We gonna get to these two.
sort of feel classic and instantly familiar. So the first character that we're introduced to is Trailblazer. She's a group home and foster kid who is volunteering at a senior center when this mysterious threat shows up and Night Thrasher runs to the rescue. And because she helps him, she ends up in the crosshairs of this new outlawed law. And she...
Okay, before we get to the thing that's really going to be like blah, 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 I got to give it, like, one thing I actually have to appreciate about, how they talk about Trailblazer is the fact that you kind of get ideas of how this character works in a way. You know what I mean? Like, why it's in her nature. It makes it sound like it's in her nature to want to help people, which is actually really good. It's like that is a selling point of why is this person the leader and blah blah blah. It's because of little traits like that. Now I know there are going to be people who are going to be all like, the fat shaming thing. I'm going to say this right now. First of all, grow up. Second of all, the thing is like, okay, fine. The person is like that, whatever. That's not what's important. The important thing is the character. Now this next bit though, we can make fun of.
Inherited from her grandfather a magic backpack of divine origin. We take
Nah. Just look at his face. Like, I'm like, I'm sorry. Anyways, nah. I can't rock with that. I can't rock with this. No. We need. I want to tell you what we need. We don't need this character right now. We need this origin about this backpack, bro. We need that. We need this grandfather and this divine, which means usually heavenly, up above, backpack, bestowed by, God or the gods, whatever they want to do in this story. That don't work. That really does not work. I am like, how in the world? How does it work? Like, I literally questioned this at times. I'm like, yo, is this like a bag of holding? Like, are we putting like shields up in here? We putting like sentinels up in here? What we doing with this backpack, bro? Can this backpack, can you step inside there and be like a Tartarus, bro? You know what I'm saying? Like, can you live in that backpack? Is that a thing? What makes it divine? How did you get that? How did your grandfather get that? I know they probably would have explained that in the story, but it's like, hey, nah, son. Should have never said that. You should have never said that. You could have at least just said, her magic backpack, and then it's like, okay, fine. All right, magic backpack. All right, that's a cool. But when you say her grandfather and divine, that's when it's like, oh, hold up. What is this? And you know what this looks like, by the way? Like, you think you slick, bro? Like, no. Like, this is some internal stuff. This is some internal stuff right here, bro. Like, you know what I'm saying? So the Eternals are doing this? Is that what you're telling me? The Eternals have backpacks like this, bro? And they can just give it to people? Is that a thing? Is that what we doing up in here, bro? But my thing is this. Here's my thing. Dora the Explorer. Just keep that in mind. Dora the Explorer. I know the joke. That's the joke. But for reals, I'm going to tell you this. That could have worked. All right. Let's move on. Oh my gosh. Why did I pause that in here, man? Anyway.
Pick the name Trailblazer because she's somebody who charges into action. She knows that she can do some good with this, mysterious gift that she's been given. Screen time is a internet kid taken to its sort of logical conclusion. As a youth, he was exposed to his grandfather's experimental internet gas.
No. Okay. I get on it so many times. Much like the grandfather with the backpack, I need a comic to explain this internet gas. Here's the problem with that. First of all, like I said, okay, Cyclops. And if you had guessed Ben 10, good for you. Because that's what comes to mind. It's like a mix of Ben 10 and Cyclops, which is dope, which would have been cool in the 2000s, in the late 2000s. I'm just saying, this is a dope design. I feel that. I like this. Screen time, I don't know, man. I don't know about that thing. But whatever, that could have been a name. And it would have been cool. This kid looks like he could rock that name. That internet, excuse me, that internet gas though. Now we gotta go. We gotta do camera. That does not make sense to me. I'm gonna be real for you. Like, here's the thing about when you. This is in. Hold on, hold on, real quick. We gotta go back to. You see this? You see this word right here? You see Marvel? You see that? It's Marvel, baby. You putting this character in this universe, bro. And grandfather, let's just say grandpa was back in like the, Vietnam or World War II times and such, with Captain America and blah blah blah, all that jazz and shields and such. Ain't nobody was keeping tabs on this guy? Like, you know what I mean? Like Iron Man wasn't keeping tabs on this. You know what I'm saying? The Internals were on that. They apparently they looked like they were on backpacks, but they weren't on that. Like, also back to that backpack real quick. Like, well, who's also on that? Like, was Thor's people on that? Who made that backpack? I want to know this. I need these comics. I need these comics to explain this. Because here's the thing: when you introduce concepts like that, it has to be like, okay, how does it work in this universe? And here's the thing about the internet gas thing. Internet gas would have worked. I talked about this with my girlfriend the other day, and it was like she pointed out, like, and then some other people said too, back in like in the 50s and 60s, like Stan Lee, rest his soul. Stan Lee said once upon a time, like the stuff like the gamma rays and all that jazz, like that was that was unknown territory. So people can make up that sort of stuff. So you can say that and that's fine. Bro, we know what the internet is like now. Like, internet is digital stuff, bro. Like, when did it become like? Because you have to understand how vapor works. So it's like, how do you do that? How do you turn digital into vapor, bro? And what's the point of that? What is the point of doing that? I need to know. So we should have had that. We should have had that comment. I would rather read that. I would rather somebody explain that to me than like whatever was going on. Like, I'm like, what? Like, what's up with these grandpas, dude? We got going off. I'm like, this comic, man. I want grandpas, bro. I want grandpa comics, bro. I want grandpa comics about backpacks and internet gas. That's what I want, man. That's just what I want. Go ahead, Sam, bro.
And that has patched him permanently into the World Wide Web. The word screen time is only ever used in a sort of restrictive sense. And because we're doing a story about teenage rebels, a lot of the names are about teens fighting against labels that are put on them. So with screen time, we liked the idea that he has infinite screen time. Snowflake.
We gonna get to these two later. I'm gonna put a pin on them. Yes, yeah. You give me that look. You give me that look. Like, why are you gonna put me in later? Yeah, you know why. You know why. You know why you're getting it. Anyway, be negative. But anyways, I'm gonna go into real quick about remember 2020. Just I want you to really think about 20 for reals. I want you to think about 2020 and the stuff that we had to go through with that. That was bad timing to discuss. And like also, I'm like Trailblazer isn't really a like because it almost because pretty much you're saying like they're using derogatory words to rebel and such, which is like okay, but here's the problem: like who says Trailblazer? You know what I mean? That doesn't work. It's not coherent in that way. But the thing is also Marvel and DC and all that, they're not it's not that they've never delved into like, you know, political issues and such or making allegories based off of, current time issues and such. That's why you have, for instance, with um well, the X-Men, you had the whole Charles Xavier and Magneto, that they were, they represented Martin Luther King and Malcolm X respectively and such. It was about the civil rights and about how, like, African Americans slash minorities, how they should react to, Caucasian slash the majority, treated them as such, the whole segregation stuff. That is a thing. But I think this, the reason why this does not work here is because this relates to the New Warriors. And the New Warriors, essentially, they were kind of like little rebels and blah, blah, all that. But you mentioned earlier that there was edginess to them. There's nothing edgy about screen time. There's nothing edgy about Trailblazer. And definitely not edgy about Safe Space and Snowflake. Definitely not them. But I will give this though. I realize that I'm like all kind of. I'll go ahead and do this real quick. There we go. B negatives popping up and such. But the thing is that this didn't have to be about that, and this is what you're selling. You know, so the question becomes, who is this for? Is this for the people who read the New Warriors, or is this for people who never read the New Warriors and they're just getting a new comic? I want you to think about, again, nostalgia, because that to me should have been the major theme for this. And there's something about this that could work related to them, related to these characters in that regard. But yeah, just stuff like that. It's like it doesn't really work, and it's kind of getting tiresome. It really is. This is one of the things a lot of us who are into comics or even manga, whatever, that we're kind of getting tired of. We're getting tired of these, you know, we're getting tired of the fact that, you know, and like I said, I don't want to sound political here, but we're getting tired of, people being on the soapbox and such. The comics should be about entertaining people. It shouldn't be about soapbox. We've been past that stuff. We need to move on from that. And it's like it's what's getting old and such, and it's kind of also why MCU is kind of falling apart, because a lot of times, a lot of those works feel like, oh, it's just a soapbox and such. Like, it's about this, about that, or these type of people, this type of. We don't need that. I came here to read a comic about New Warriors. I want to know, like, about these characters, or I'm here for, Captain America. I'm here for this. If you have some stuff, keep it subtle. Don't make it the selling point. But we gonna move on, because we're gonna talk about. Here's the one cool thing. This is the one cool section I actually like in this, except for the little bits he does. But I actually do like this.
Is the goth kid. When he was a baby, he got a rogue life-saving blood transfusion, we assume from Michael Morbius. And now he has a very similar look and very similar vampire powers. B negative also is obviously a pun. It's a blood type, which is great for a vampire character. And it's also
We didn't need that pun. We didn't need that pun.
proud ownership of the idea of having a bad attitude. I want the people who read
B negative. I'm gonna be for real. Be for real. Anyways, B negative. Honestly, I can say is a. I feel like this is the most thought out character. It really is. I forgot something else too, by the way. I'm gonna go back real quick. Well, the whole screen time thing. There was something in that whole bit that you said where I was like, the whole selling thing. I'm gonna just go back real quick. Nope, that's not what I want. Sorry. Let me go ahead and do this. Nope, it's right here.
As a youth, he was exposed to his grandfather's experimental internet gas.
The way he said internet guys there, like he questioned his own thing. I just want to bring that up. Like, not cool. Like, you gotta know what you're selling, bro. You're the one that wrote it. That's why again, explain it. But back to be negative. Point with be negative. The way it's like, it almost feels like, and then here's the cool thing about be negative, by the way. This is the only character that actually survived from this cancellation. And like from what I understand, he's like in the Blade comics now and such because he pointed to Morbius, and that's a character that a lot of the old comic kids would have really known about. Um, the fact that he was very identifiable. It's a goth kid, and it's like okay, fine. And and I actually will say, even the design is kind of cool. The one thing I will say is that again with the nostalgia, I feel like B negative would have really sold well, especially during the like, you know, bear with me. It would have been cool during the Twilight era. You know what I'm saying? Like the stuff like I forgot the name of those bugs. It was like Vlad the Kid, something like that. Like the one sort of like he's the eighth grade, whatever. Darren Shan books, Sect the Freak, all of that. That would have been a cool era for B negative. It really would have, because to me that character says, it's ringing that time, and those type of kids, the goth kids, would have really liked that. It kind of also gives me a little bit of Invader Sim vibes, like not saying about the alien and all that jazz, but that whole edginess that and that relates to the new Warriors. The thing you were talking about earlier, how they were edgy and they were cool and all that. This is what B negative would have probably fit in that era. So before I go into the last two bits, I want to say, like I talked about the whole nostalgia thing. Here's my idea that this should have been. This should have been a comic related to nostalgia. And that these characters, particularly Trailblazer, Screen Time, and B Negative, they should have probably had I want to say a Gwenpool vibe. Like, imagine this, all right? Imagine, for instance, kids from our world who are into their own little things. And they could be like part of like a book club, a comic book club, movie club, whatever. You got B negative, like the goth kid. You got the kid who's into the vampire books and such. You got Screen Time, the gamer kid, the kid who's on his device all the time. And then you have Trailblazer, the caretaker kid and such. The good kid. Um, that if you had made it that these characters were from our world and they got into the Marvel universe and their personalities and their abilities and such were all based around like what they were into. It could have even been a nod to some of the cartoons and stuff at the time. Um, like I said, like Dora the Explorer, that actually could have worked. Like, what if she actually had like a monkey character or whatever? You know what I mean? Like, that could have been like a thing. Like, oh, it's like related to Dora the Explorer or even Indiana Jones and such. Um, Screen Time again. That could have related to Ben 10. I said, the X-Men and such. Maybe there could even been. Maybe there would have been jokes about it, like, oh, are you Cyclops? No, I'm not Cyclops. I'm Screen Time. But another thing too is it could have related to the Matrix. Like, what if that was a thing? You know what I mean? And then you have B negative, obviously. Like I said, the whole vampire thing. But maybe there could have been more stuff. Maybe there could have been stuff like related to like vampires. Like Underworld was a thing. His jacket kind of gives me a little bit of like Underworld stuff. And he also had Vampire the Masquerade. So there could have been that too. And maybe some of his powers were based off of that. They could have been nods to that stuff. And that's what this comic feels like it should have came across as. Like it's a nod to a lot of that old stuff. And it could have worked that way. But, and this is why I'm going to go into the safe space and I'm going to go into the safe space and Snowflake been. I'm going to them last because this is the one major drawback that really just like I feel like really killed this. Well, we're gonna start with like the wannabe Cyclops.
He has infinite screen time. Snowflake and Safe Space are the twins, and their
I gotta. Okay, I'm gonna say right now, like you mentioned the whole modern costume thing. This is why I was like, kind of like, nah, nah to this, just nah, no, no to this in general. But again, maybe Wonder Twins, but we're gonna see why.
names are very similar to screen time. It's this idea that these are terms that get thrown around on the internet that they don't see as derogatory to take those.
Snowflake maybe, but from my understanding, Safe Space is not even really. I know it goes into that whole bit, but I'm like, even like in even those, I'm like, I'm pretty sure those people never use it as a derogatory. So I'm just like, whatever. Be negative was never a derogatory word. I never heard that. Only one is screen time, like really, and stuff like.
Those words and kind of wear them as badges of honor. Safe Space is kind of a big, burly, sort of stereotypical jock. He can create force fields, but he can.
That's not stereotypical. First of all, so no, no to that. That's a lie. That is a big lie. I'm just saying that is not stereotypical. What kind of stereotype jog look like that, or even belt like that? Nah, son. And then let's go to this power.
Only trigger them if he's protecting somebody else.
That I, I'm sorry. I paused on this, and it's just like look on his face. It's just like, man, like, bro, are you selling this? You just like, it just looks like in the context of today, man. It's just this looks like you're just like, man, like what was I doing exactly? What were you doing? Like, I was just like, here's my thing. Um, whatever the power thing. Like I get on the power thing, just like the whole like so you build a shield to protect other people. So what about yourself? Well, you are supposed to be a jock. So I guess you can like go ham on people. Like I can't, man. And like it's just that name. It's like I feel like if you wanted to actually you like so force field, okay, cool, force field. Like so many people do that. You know what would have been more interesting? But then again, you like safe space. That's like I said. Like I was thinking, like to be fair, maybe you could have used that to be like, you know, he teleports or creates a space for people. Like it actually can be like a hey, you know, like kind of like we're going to a Tartarus thing, like whatever. That's cool. But to be fair though, I think that should have been the thing with Trailblazers backpack. So yeah, no, gosh, man, I feel you, bro. I feel you. I feel you.
Snowflake is non-binary and goes by they, them. Snowflake has the power to generate individual crystallized snow.
I'm not going into that, but I will say this: I don't think we needed that. I don't think you needed to sell that. Like that is the thing that really because again, once again, one of the things is that people people have their beliefs. They have their, how they look at the world and such. And, you know, I have mine. And like, do I agree? No. But here's the thing though. Do we need to hear this? And that is right there. This is why I went to Safe Space and Snowflake last. And then like Snowflake pretty much just like I'm just gonna play this real quick, so that way, get the gist of the whole thing. Like, so we'll go ahead.
Snowflake-shaped shurikens. The connotations of the word snowflake in our culture right now are something fragile. And this is a character who is turning it into something sharp. Snowflake is the person who has the more offensive power, and Safe Space is the person who has the more defensive power. The idea was that
Yeah.
they
So
would mirror each other and complement each other.
that's like a typical thing. All right. The major problem, like I was saying, the one of the major problem I have is that it's like, and this is the thing, like again, we're dealing with now, where a lot of us we get tired of this. And Marvel was doing this at the time, a lot of it. They've kind of slowed down on it, but it was a lot of, we don't care so much about the characters, we don't care so much about the story, um, or even the concepts. What we care more about is the agenda. We care more about the agenda. We care more about the again, it's the whole soapbox thing. Like, we want to preach this thing, whatever. The problem with that is I the problem is it's not so much if they were in their own thing, fine. But the problem comes in with the fact that this you are connecting those characters to this. And like, one of the things is that, again, you don't you don't need to do that. You don't need to go all out like that. Like, you don't need to go into that sort of stuff. Just be like, this character, this character is fine. I actually like a bit of the description. I can give it to that. It's like, that's kind of interesting. Like, well, snowflake usually means somebody who's fragile. You could have just said the character is fragile, or the name means fragile, but they're sharp. So that can give me some ideas. Like, what if, like, okay, they're a fragile person, but they attack. That's actually pretty cool. Same goes for safe space. You know what I mean? Like, maybe like there's the idea that safe space looks like a jock. He looks like, or whatever you want to be. He looks strong, but he's actually very much a defensive person, a protective person. So that can give, there is a contrasting. It's so obvious, of course. But the thing is, the point is that that would have been interesting, an interesting approach. But the problem is, when you go into that, when you're trying to sell this to a majority of people. Now, I imagine there are some people who are okay with that, and that's understandable. But for the sake of bringing back an old IP after so long, and you're practically going based off of, you're selling based off of nostalgia, like I said, but not in that way like I was talking about it, but in the sense of like, hey, here's these old characters and they're with these new characters. It's like, it doesn't work. New Warriors hasn't been out for a long, long, long time. I think the one thing is this: when it comes to this trailer here, it kind of gives an idea of like, this is almost like a time capsule of how things were back then. And it's kind of like we kind of deal with some of this stuff now. But my point being is this, like I said, the point of this video is to be like, here's what went wrong, but here's what could have been. And then I think this could have, if they ever decide to go back to these characters, here's some ideas, you know. And I mean, like, who am I? Just some random guy, whatever, on YouTube and such, you know. But you know, I will say this, you know, I have written some stuff. It's not all out there, whatever, but I have worked on some stuff. I mean, if you see like, you know, some of my early videos, you see that like I've like even when I've worked on games and such. And I try to think about things like whenever it comes to selling, I try to think about what sells. I try to think about what is going to grab people. Why do people want to do this? Like when I did the ES Punk thing, my major thing about that game was it's about struggles, but at the same time, it's about how creative you can be. And there is the idea of rebelling. You're rebelling against the idea of the normalcy of playing a tabletop game. I've worked on that over time, so it's been a while. So sorry for those of you who have like been waiting for like the legit game. It's been a minute. But the whole idea is that I try to think about that sort of stuff. I'm not saying there wasn't thought behind this, but I just get the vibe that, you know, was there actual care? Like I feel like the most character he really put in and was like really happy about was, oh my
Also is obviously a pun. It's a blood type, which is great. Excitement that they felt. Read our new.
God. Anyways, the point is that I feel like with B negative, there was a lot there where he's like, it didn't sound like he didn't know what he was saying. Like I said, like I joke about but it's like for real, like when you're saying like internet gas, it's like you're questioning that. That should be a concept you should understand. Like I imagine when Tagashi Sensei from of Hunter x Hunter, when he does the Nen, like he's able to talk about that. Like, oh yeah, this is how Nen works. Like any power system, because that's what it is. It's a power system. It's easy to talk about be negative because you already have a foundation. You already have concepts that's already there. Like I say, you have the whole Morbius thing, and that's why it's like, well, it works for Blade because hey, you're a vampire kid and you already have this sound background where about him. So it works. Trailblazer could have worked, but then you go into the magical backpack and the grandfather thing. I don't know about screen time. Like screen time is like you on your own on that, bro. Like you got the internet guessing, like so, but that's the whole point. And then we don't get no explanations. Did you notice this? We don't get no explanations about safe space and snowflake. No, because here's the problem. The problem was that we were going into the they represent this, they represent these problems and such. But okay, so I can so being negative, that goth kid doesn't have to get a backstory like that. He represents goths, I guess. Screen time represents people on their screens all the time. Um, and Trailblazer, I don't know, it's like represents foster care helper kids, whatever. Point is that we get explanations from them, but we don't get an explanation for safe space or snowflake. And it almost feels like these are the characters you want to sell the most. But that's why it doesn't work. If they were in their own thing, fine. Let them be in their own thing. Do that comic. But for new warriors, like either have these characters, like the three I mentioned, and be like, hey, you know what? Like these characters represent this. Like I said, nostalgia. Sell them that. Be all like, yo, these characters represent a time period. Like it's almost like a hey, you remember this and you remember this? Because you know who's gonna read that? Kids who grew up in the 2000s and they watched those kind of cartoons. Even kids that weren't teenagers like myself that were probably born and they did watch Dora the Explorer. They did see a bit of Ben 10. They did see some of the vampire stuff. That would have been cool. But we don't get that. Um, I'll go ahead and play the rest of this. I keep like doing the thing.
Warriors to feel all of the excitement that they felt if they read the 90s one. We want it to have big, colorful characters, personality clashes, romance, a diverse cast, which is something that the New Warriors titles have always strived to make a priority. Every New Warriors comic has always felt like a reflection of the year that it came out. And I don't think we're worried about being dated. I think we're way more interested about it being now.
Funny enough, though, that you say that, because like I said, as I was looking at this, I'm like, that is dated. That feel a lot of that stuff was like the 2000 stuff. And why not sell that? Another thing too, in that it's like when you're saying like, well, they represent the time. How? Show us. Because again, like if you're trying to say these kids or these characters represent that, like this comic is for people. This comic is supposed to be for people who never read the '90s one, and you want them to get into that to know that story. Like, where's the dynamic stuff? Like, I want to showcase real quick, like for real. Like, let's look at this. Like that right there. That looks pretty dope. That's a dope image. Um, that's a dope cover. Brought up. That's dope right there. Where's that? You know, all of this. Like, this is dope to look at, bro. I want to read this. I don't want to read about no backpack like it came from like Thor time or whatever. I don't want to read no internet gas. Like I want to know the backstory of that because now that sounds so outlandish. And the thing is, that would have probably been funny. Like, you know what? Also, I said this. I said it at Gwenpool. These characters actually probably would have made it in Gwenpool. I'm gonna put that out there. Like Marvel, if you legit are watching this, like for reals, and you don't try to copy strike me, um, for reals, I'm gonna make this pitch, and you can get this dude, you know, you get this guy, Kibble Smith, you get him on board. We can bring him along. We can, what I'm saying. Oh man, I have it on. I have it like this. Oh my gosh. He said, "Ooh, me? Ooh, I could be in it too. Yeah, man, you could be part of it too." My thing is, yo, bro, like, make it a thing where Gwenpool, if you do any more Gwenpool comics, she gets her homies. Her homies come from the world. They're all comic book fans and such. Those characters pop up. That could have been a thing. We didn't get it though. And that's the thing about this is that we didn't get this because it got so much backlash. And like, yeah, you see, poke a bit fun at it or whatever, and like, I still get like, what? But I like to look at works like this at times. Sometimes I actually do. It's a strange thing, but I like to think about like works that are like critically negative that have gotten such a backlash and such. And sometimes I like to think to myself, what could have actually worked here? What could have been? What could have made this, if not great, what could have made this a lot better? What could have sold? And how could this have sold? And I kind of want this to be sort of like a cautionary tale for anybody who does try to sell their stuff. To think about, again, what makes your work work. Try to think about certain, certain words and such, and try to, you know, think about who your audience is. One of the major things I've always learned as a writer was think about your audience and why they want to do this. Like, I remember for grad school, for instance, there was a bit where for writing for the screening stage that um, it was like it was in a book, but essentially it said, imagine you're writing a movie and you want to get somebody in there in the seat and stay in their seat past 10 minutes. What is going to make them want to sit in that seat in the first place? What's going to make them want to stay beyond the 10-minute mark? That should have been the thing. Because, like I said, a lot of the presentation I got from this was I don't know what I'm writing. I don't understand why I'm writing this. This doesn't make any sense. But the main thing I want to address is, like, the political approach of this, the political angles here and such, which, again, you don't really need. And if you do go into that stuff, that should have been like subtle stuff that you bring up in the comic. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, what if you just talked about Snowflake and Safe Space and you just talked about, like, you know, you just revealed that over time. Oh, okay, well, that character's like that. Whoa, okay. Okay, well, that's interesting. Well, let's discuss this. And what if Safe Space? Here's the thing. What if Safe Space and Snowflake, their stuff is based off of actual emotions? Like, what if that was a thing? That could have been a selling point. Their powers can't come from an emotional state. Okay, well, that's interesting. Hmm. Okay, but we didn't get that. But like I said, the most confident person in this entire work, who actually, mind you, out of this canceled comic, actually became a legit character, was B negative. So that being said, what did we learn today? Uh, be negative.